All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive into UK journalism, and you're going to want to take some notes on this one because it gets juicy.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It really is.
Huge.
We're dissecting a major inquiry report
Oh, yeah.
that's basically a health check on the entire industry.
Whole thing.
Its culture, its practices, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and let's be honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's questionable choices.
It's a bit of a beast, isn't it, this inquiry report? I mean, what's interesting about it is it wasn't just one scandal or one incident that sparked this whole thing. It was a culmination of concerns about how the press operated, how they interacted with the public, how they interacted with the police, and where those lines get blurry. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, and right off the bat, the report tackles this question that's been debated since, like, Gutenberg,
Oh, God, yeah.
Invented the printing press.
Yeah.
When does the public's right to know outweigh an individual's right to privacy?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't
Right.
it? And the report acknowledges that there's no easy answer.
Right.
But it suggests more leeway for entertainment news,
Yeah. Okay.
that kind of thing. But when you're dealing with someone's personal life, their privacy, you need a good reason,
Yeah, you need a good reason.
a rock-solid public interest justification.
Yeah.
And not just, oh, we think the public might find this interesting,
Right.
but like a real reason why this information is crucial for the public good.
And that's where things get tricky, right?
Totally.
Because what's juicy gossip to you and me might be someone else's, like,
Oh, totally, yeah.
personal life, right?
Like the example the report uses is a celebrity facing scrutiny over their environmental impact.
Right.
Public interest?
Okay, yeah.
Probably, likely.
Okay.
But then you contrast that with revealing details about their child's medical condition.
Right.
That feels different.
Yeah.
Right? That feels like an invasion.
Yeah.
And the report really emphasizes that distinction.
It sounds like they were trying to draw some much-needed lines in the sand.
Exactly. Precisely. And they don't stop there.
Oh, really?
No. The report goes on to uncover a range of practices that raised serious ethical red flags.
Okay, let's hear it.
Starting with,
Dun, dun, dun.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Phone hacking.
Ah, yes, the news of the world.
Exactly. But here's where it gets even juicier.
Okay.
The report suggests this wasn't just an isolated incident.
Oh,
It hints at a broader problem within the industry.
really?
Whispers and rumors of phone hacking happening elsewhere.
Wow.
And they actually had evidence to back it up.
So not just one bad apple,
Right.
but maybe like a whole bushel.
Yeah, the implication is there. And phone hacking was just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, we're talking blagging. Journalists impersonating others to get private phone records.
Oh, wow.
The lengths some of them went to were astounding.
It's like something out of a spy thriller, not a
Like,
newsroom.
it's crazy, right? And speaking of undercover tactics, the report also delves into covert surveillance.
Oh, okay.
Now, we're not just talking paparazzi here.
Oh, no.
Even journalists at more established publications were using these tactics, often with shaky public interest justifications.
So basically justifying spying on people because it might make a good story.
It seems that way in some cases, and it really hits home when the report brings in specific cases like the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Right.
The press coverage was relentless,
It was.
and the report shows how it impacted not just the investigation, but also the McCann family's grief.
Oh, absolutely. To be dealing with that kind of tragedy and to have cameras constantly in your face.
Unimaginable.
Unimaginable.
Absolutely.
Really tough to even think about.
The report also revisits the Millie Dowler case, the hacking of her phone after her disappearance.
Oh, I remember that.
It was a horrifying discovery, and it really exposed the human cost of
Yeah.
these practices.
It felt like the bottom fell out of everything we thought we knew about journalism.
You got it.
No.
And the Dowler case was especially chilling because the report details how the news of the world's actions might have even given the family false hope, adding another layer of pain to an already unthinkable tragedy.
God, those human stories really drive it home, you know?
For sure.
Suddenly, it's not just some abstract ethical debate. It's about real lives impacted.
Exactly. And the report hammers that point home with other cases like Gordon and Sarah Brown and the controversies surrounding the publication of their child's medical information.
Didn't they say they gave consent for that story?
They did, but the report questions whether that consent was truly informed, truly freely given.
Okay.
It highlights the power imbalance between the press and those they report on.
It's like David and Goliath, but David has a notepad and Goliath has a printing press that can ruin your life.
What a great analogy. Spot on. And that leads us to another key area. The report tackles the blurry line between aggressive reporting, and outright harassment. The inquiry heard some truly disturbing accounts, including actress Sienna Miller's experience with relentless paparazzi.
Oh, yeah, those images of those photographers chasing her down the street,
Acrylic.
trying to get into her home. It was relentless.
It was relentless, and the report emphasizes that it's not just about one photographer being a nuisance.
Right.
It's the cumulative effect, the constant intrusive attention that creates this atmosphere of fear and harassment.
It's like that pack mentality
Totally.
you see with paparazzi.
Yeah.
Beat off each other, and it just gets out of control.
Exactly, and that same culture of impunity the report identifies in those situations, it seems to permeate another key area, the relationship between the police and the press.
Oh, yes, the old, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
It's cozy to a concerning degree.
Yeah.
The report revealed a surprisingly close relationship, especially at higher levels, raising concerns about potential biases and conflicts of interest. I mean, think about it. How do you objectively investigate someone you might be having drinks with at a gala next week?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
And it gets even more complicated. The report highlighted the use of off-the-record briefings, where police share information with journalists that isn't meant for public consumption.
Which, let's be honest, sounds like a recipe for leaks and spun narratives.
Exactly.
That.
While these briefings can provide context, they also create a lack of transparency and carry a huge risk of information being used for purposes beyond its intention. And the report uses a really interesting example,
Okay.
the case of Dick Fedorcio, former head of PR for the Metropolitan Police,
Okay.
and his ties to Neil Wallace from the News of the World. That whole controversy reeked of favoritism and undue influence.
Classic. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly, but with much higher stakes.
Oh, absolutely.
And coupled with what the report calls a culture of fear, it meant people who had legitimate complaints against the press were often too afraid to come forward.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine who wants to risk being the target of a smear campaign by a powerful publication.
No one. It's a huge risk. So the report found evidence of publications dragging their feet on apologies, even when they were clearly in the wrong.
Oh, wow.
And even when they did apologize, they often buried them in some obscure corner of the paper.
Oh, come on.
It's about controlling the narrative, even when they've been caught red-handed.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of controlling the narrative, the report doesn't just blame, like, individual journalists or editors.
Right.
They look at the bigger picture, too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
The report acknowledges the enormous commercial pressures on journalism, especially in the world of tabloids, where it's all about getting that next big scoop.
Clickbait.
Exactly. That pressure to sell papers to be first inevitably leads to ethical compromises.
Right.
But it's not just on them. We have to acknowledge the public's role in this, too.
Oh, our obsession with celebrity gossip and scandal.
You got that appetite for those kinds of stories fuels the demand.
Right.
It creates this vicious cycle. The press provides what they think the public wants, and the public consumes it.
So we're all kind of complicit in this system.
In a way, yes. The report suggests that being more mindful of what we consume, what we click on, what we share, it all plays a part.
So it's not just about calling out bad journalism. It's also about being more thoughtful consumers of information ourselves.
Exactly. It's about being media literate,
Okay.
understanding how information is produced, packaged, and disseminated,
Yeah.
and recognizing the biases at play,
Yeah.
both within ourselves and in the media we consume.
It is a challenge.
It's a huge challenge.
In today's world,
In today's world where we're just bombarded with information constantly.
of all sides.
Yes, and this report gives us a framework for navigating that complexity.
Okay.
It encourages us to ask critical questions about the information we encounter. Who produced this? What are their motives?
Right.
What evidence supports this claim?
So it's about being skeptical without becoming cynical.
Exactly. You've got to approach information with a critical but open mind.
I like that. So where does this all leave us? What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the UK press?
It's a lot to process, right?
It really is. Yeah, it's a lot.
It's heavy stuff, but also important to think about.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're not done yet. The report actually dedicates a significant portion to the issue of whistleblowing,
Oh, interesting.
which is fascinating in the context of all we've been discussing.
Yeah, because whistleblowers are often the ones who expose these practices, right?
Exactly.
That we're talking about holding those in power accountable.
You've got whistleblowing is crucial for a healthy democracy.
Yeah.
The report really emphasizes that, but they also acknowledge the risk that these whistleblowers take.
Right, because it takes a lot of guts to come forward.
Oh, absolutely. Potential retaliation,
Yeah.
career damage, even legal threats.
So it's not enough to just encourage people to speak up. You have to have protections in place.
You've hit the nail on the head. The report stresses the need for strong safeguards for whistleblowers,
Yeah.
including confidentiality and a clear process for investigating their claims fairly.
Okay, so circling back, we've talked about phone hacking, covert surveillance, harassment, cozy relationships with the police. It's kind of a bleak picture of the UK press.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah,
It is. But the report isn't about demonizing the press entirely.
right.
They recognize the crucial role they play in a free society.
Of course, yeah.
It's more about holding a mirror up, highlighting the practices that erode public trust, and emphasizing the need for responsible, ethical journalism.
Because ultimately, a healthy press needs the public's trust.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The report doesn't just scrutinize the press. It also looks at the role of the public in shaping the media landscape.
Oh, you mean our insatiable appetite for those scandalous headlines?
Exactly. The report points out that our fascination with celebrity culture, with gossip and drama, fuels the demand for these kinds of stories.
It does.
It's a two-way street. The press provides what they think the public wants, and the public consumes it.
Right. So we're all kind of complicit in this system.
In a way, yes.
Hmm.
The report suggests that being more mindful of what we consume, what we click on, what we share, it all plays a part.
So it's not just about calling out bad journalism. It's also about being more thoughtful consumers of information ourselves.
Exactly. It's about being media literate, understanding how information is produced, packaged, and disseminated, and recognizing the biases at play,
Oh, absolutely.
both within ourselves and in the media we consume.
Which is tough. That's a challenge.
It's a huge challenge in today's world,
Yeah.
where we're just bombarded with information constantly
freeware.
from all sides, yeah. And this report gives us a framework for navigating that complexity.
Okay.
It encourages us to ask critical questions about the information we encounter. Who produced this? What are their motives? What evidence supports this claim?
So it's about being skeptical but not cynical.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Approaching information with a critical but open mind.
I like that. So where does this all leave us? What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the UK press?
It really does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like all these things we talk about impacting the news, how it's made, how it's consumed, we're not just like sitting here on the receiving end.
Right. We're not just these passive vessels.
We're part of it. And that's what I find so hopeful about this report.
Oh, really?
It's not just, here's all this bad stuff going on. They actually talk solutions.
Okay. So what do they suggest?
Well, they emphasize stronger self-regulation from the industry itself,
Okay.
clearer guidelines on things like paying sources or dealing with police, and a more accessible system for complaints.
So less of the, oops, we messed up, better bury that apology, and more, let's be transparent and accountable.
Exactly.
I like it.
And remember our chat about whistleblowers. The report really stresses how important it is to protect those folks.
Yeah.
You know, creating safe ways for them to come forward, no fear of like their life falling apart.
Because they're the ones often taking the biggest risk to expose this stuff.
100% they shine the light on the shadiest practices.
It's like they always say, sunlight's the best disinfectant.
Ain't that the truth? But it's not just about these big top-down changes, right?
Right.
The report also talks about the role of like individual journalists, editors.
Right, the people on the ground.
Yeah, because they're the ones making those day-to-day choices. What do we publish? How do we report this?
So it's about personal responsibility, even within a system that often wants the most sensational thing.
Exactly. And that's where I think this report, it's most important, you know? Calling for that culture shift.
Yeah.
Getting rid of that win at all costs
Yeah.
attitude towards something more thoughtful.
Right. Because words have power.
They do.
And how you use them, it really impacts people's lives.
No doubt about it. Brings us back to that first question, really. Freedom of the press, essential to a free society. But how do we balance that with ethical, responsible reporting?
It's a tough one for sure. So where does this leave all of us, trying to make sense of it all?
I think the biggest takeaway is
Yeah.
be informed, be engaged. You can't just passively read a headline and think that's the whole story.
Right. No more just trusting blindly.
Exactly. Think critically, check your sources. Don't be afraid to call out BS when you see it.
So we're part of the solution, not just complaining about the problem.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's something anyone can do, no matter what you believe or where you come from.
Well said. This has been quite a deep dive.
It has.
We've surfaced with a lot to think about.
We have. If any of this has piqued your interest, though, do check out the full report. It's fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the UK press. It's been enlightening, it's been challenging, but I think ultimately hopeful.
Here. Yeah.
Until next time, keep asking those tough questions and keep seeking out the truth.